so much for coming out tonight. Performing these new songs, my God, I've never been more vulnerable in my life. I'm going to be honest, there's quite a few songs on this album which are basically like stay away from me songs. This is not a good idea songs. Like during rehearsals for this tour, I was crying, just going, I don't know how I'm going to perform these songs, because every time I tried to sing them, I was just sobbing. My voice is feeling a bit tired. Can we just do like a chorusy?
Missy's an introverted, quiet person, but she can get out there and just like, it's all heart. And it's such a beautiful thing to watch, and I wish the audience knew how much they were getting a big piece of her.
You should run while you can. I tend to cry in the kitchen once the kids are in bed. Wake up and do it all again.
It's absolutely heart-wrenching and gut-wrenching as a mum to listen to the words of those songs. I mean, these are the saddest songs she's ever written. I mean, by far.
Here's my body, here's my scars. Now show me what kind of man you are. I'm definitely not pretending to have any of the answers, or to be strong, or to even like myself much at the moment. We've all written such strong narratives for ourselves, and then you come to a point in your life where it's like, oh no, actually, that's not your narrative anymore. That's burnt to the ground. And it's like, how the hell did I end up here? Go again.
Hi, I'm Missy Higgins and I've been unearthed from Triple J in Melbourne. I've been singing since I was small. Hang on, sorry. I've been singing since I was very young and playing piano since I was 6.
I won Triple J Unearthed at the beginning of Year 12 with a song that I'd written in Year 10. It's a song called All for Believing. Pull back the shield between us and I can't.
Missy's early recordings really blew me away because it was just completely authentic, the way that she sang her songs, the way she brought her words to life. You really believed every word that she was singing.
I'm all for believing, I'm all for believing. I discovered that I could write songs, and then as soon as I discovered that, it was like realising that I had this special way of kind of working through my teenage angst.
I play a verse, the first verse and the first chorus of one of my new songs. It's called The Sound of White.
So this is where I used to play you guys my new songs. If ever I had written a new song, I used to make you come in here and sit down and I would present it to you. Like a freeze-dried rose, you will never be what you were.
We had this plan once that we all got together and we knew you were going to play us a new song and we were like, let's pretend that we don't like it.
Can I interrupt with your idea?
I know.
And if I listen to the sound of white, sometimes I hear your smile.
And so Missy played the song and afterwards there was just all silence and we were like... And then you just like ran out of the room upstairs and locked yourself in your bedroom.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's what I meant. I think we felt we scarred you for life.
Well, obviously not, because I can't remember it. Or maybe the scar is so deep that I've blacked it out of my memory.
When Missy was little, she was adorable.
Last night I was dreaming, I was locked in a prison cell.
She was our little toy. So we used to dress her up and put her on a stage, give her a microphone and make her be Madonna and sing things. I mean, she loved it. She loved it. But she also was strong-willed as well, like she refused to wear a dress.
She was always singing. We went on long holidays and she would sing literally for 6 hours in the car until we had to, to tell her to just stop for a bit, give us a break.
My brother and my sister and I started singing a lot together. Like, we'd just harmonise all the time around the house. And then, yeah, when I was about 14 or so, I started singing with my brother's jazz band on the weekends.
It would just be that thing where suddenly the audience would change when she was singing. I think she had it instinctively in her, like it seemed to be quite natural to her to be on stage.
I went to boarding school because my older brother and sister went and they loved it, and it had an amazing music program. They had this music room with a piano in it that I just used to go and sit in and play the piano, just improvising for hours and hours on end. That became a real lifeline for me. I just felt so much pressure to figure out what I was going to do with my life and try and get good grades, and I'm very obsessive, so I just got really overwhelmed. This one incident happened. It was in year 11 and I had a collapse one day on the walk back to the boarding house. I just felt like, I don't know, it was like I wanted to just implode. And all I remember was just like being on the ground, unable to open my eyes, and everybody just running around me shouting.
And we got a call from the school saying that she was having problems. They'd admitted her to the infirmary. So we went down to see her.
But I remember having a talk with my dad and saying, I think I might be depressed. It was the first time I'd ever used that word. And he was just kind of silent for a bit, and then he was like, well, it's probably time that I told you that I've had depression my whole life too, and it kind of runs in my family, so you probably are depressed. At that, I just burst into tears, you know, but I also felt a bit of relief because it was like, oh, it's a legitimate thing, whatever is happening to me. Soon after that, I started on antidepressants, and that helped a lot. And music became a real saviour for me, really.
Missy had won a school competition and the prize was recording a song. So we had this recording.
Yeah, I remember you rang me up at school and you said, there's this competition called Unearthed and we think that you should enter all for believing in it.
Yeah.
And then you
when you won, I screamed the house down.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, she's going to be famous. And Mum and Dad were like, whatever.
Yeah, they didn't really know what it was. I didn't really know how big a deal it was either. And then I realised that I'd suddenly become a little bit cooler at school.
Somebody said, can you find the way to God?
As a result of winning that, there was a showcase and she had to play 5 songs at the show, which was in 2 weeks' time or something. So she had to write a couple of new ones.
Will you keep on falling until you reach the ground?
And they were all incredible and we were like, oh my God, she's going to be a musician. Like, that's now her thing. It was amazing.
Katie was a little girl who never found the way.
I then sort of took on the role as manager until she found a manager. You know, tone-deaf me.
Never was okay.
I had heard Missy on the radio and made a note that I had to try and find out more about her. Later that same day, her mother called up looking for some advice. I literally answered the phone and said, Margaret, you've just beaten me to the punch.
Thank you very much.
I was really excited, but I think I was a little bit overwhelmed. So it took me quite a long time to be able to write for the first album.
This album I'm working towards, if it had to have an underlying theme, it'd probably be just the troubles and the happiness and just all the ups and downs of growing up. So, yeah.
John Watson, Missy's manager, called me and said, we'd love to get you on just to help Missy do a small little, solo tour.
Suddenly I can't stay in this room.
But it just very quickly exploded. And suddenly it was like, we've got all these dates.
But this is how we go, baby.
And it just did not stop.
Your words and I'll go home.
I remember making the conscious decision of like, I'm not going to be this pop starlet that you can dress a certain way or make to look a certain way. I don't want you to try to make me look sexy in order to sell my songs. So the hair came off, the shoes came off. I didn't give them anything to work with.
There's so much punk attitude to Missy. It would have been a really big deal to be that young and to stay true to yourself. As soon as I was exposed to her and hearing her Australian accent, it was like, wow, this is cool.
My producer, John Porter, was just like, he made a few jokes about it, like, sound of white.
And I was like, screw you, this is my accent, this is where I come from, this is my sound. So I remember really like dialing up the Aussiness of my accent from that point onwards, and sometimes I wonder if he didn't make that comment, if that album would have sounded quite so Aussie.
He left a card, a bar of soap and a scrubbing brush next to a note that said, use these down to your bones.
The first single that was released was Scar.
Squeeze through a circle. He tried to cut me so unfit.
There were plenty of radio stations that didn't add Scar when it first came out, didn't add it for months. In fact, there were lots of people who told us that she would never work in that mainstream world because she didn't do all the things you normally have to do to have pop success. Turned out that was actually one of the reasons that people related to her most, was because she did have that point of difference.
Never go that far. Could you lead me with a scar?
Yeah, that song was massive. It was massive for me, and I don't think The Sound of White would have had the success it did without it.
The Aria for the Album of the Year goes to Missy Higgins!
I don't think anybody expected it to be what it became. Selling 1 million copies and winning all the Aria Awards and all those sorts of things.
Wow, this is unbelievable.
I loved the fact that I was successful and that people were loving my music, but I didn't really love everything that came with it.
That explosion onto the scene happened when she was really quite young, and that's a very vulnerable age when you're trying to find yourself.
I think in the early days, people were very interested in my love life and very interested in, well, they were very interested in, my sexuality and who I was dating and what gender I was dating. And I found that really hard because I was still figuring it out at the time, but also just a very private person.
That was a tricky time. Newsflash, I was that person. We went out, Missy and I went out together, and it was great. We had a great relationship. We had a really lovely time. It kind of made sense. We were just working together and touring the world together. We were young, but it was really hard. It was still a sensitive thing.
I feel like kids coming up today, like some people are very comfortable being like, I'm completely, you know, fluid in every way, gender fluid, sexuality fluid. And I think that's kind of amazing. And I think if it was me coming up at that age right now, I would probably be the same. Like just no labels, I'm not interested in labels. But I was coming into the industry at a time where it was still very taboo. It all just felt quite terrifying. And I didn't feel like I could be myself, and all I wanted to do was just to relax somewhere and not be noticed. My partner at the time told me about Broome, and because she'd lived there for a couple of years in the past.
So we went for a holiday and she fell in love with it. The moment you get off the plane in that place, it's just like you feel it, it just hits you in the chest.
There's no ego in Broome. It's just like the dirt and the water and good people and music. And I really felt like I could just take a breath, you know. So I wrote a lot of my second album there.
I think certainly the second album was hard because all of a sudden there was so much weight on it and so much expectation, and not just from people on the outside, but for herself. We broke up in the process of her writing that album, and I think suddenly some of those doors flew open and she was able to write a few songs there, so it wasn't all bad.
Over the course of that second album, she moved to America and toured a lot, made some real inroads in America, had a gold single with Where I Stood, and got to the point where she could sell 2,000 or 3,000 tickets in most big American cities.
Yeah, I just did laps and laps and laps of America. I'd just become this machine. I'd become so removed from the teenager that used to write songs in her bedroom because she loved it. I just didn't love music anymore after all that. It had turned into something completely different, and I hated it.
And she took me out for brunch and said, don't call me about work anymore because I'm going to quit. And she did. So, yeah, it was frustrating that she was choosing to pull the plug, but I wasn't shocked by it because she'd really struggled badly with writer's block and she'd really tried everything to get around it, and just nothing was working for her.
I did a whole heap of soul-searching stuff. So I went to uni. I studied Australian Indigenous studies, which I loved. I was searching really hard for some other thing that I could do with my life because I didn't think that music really mattered, and I wanted to do something that made a real tangible difference in the world.
We didn't put anything in front of her for probably a good 18 months, and then out of the blue she was offered a week of shows on the Lilith Fair Festival, which is a touring festival of all female artists in America that was really big at the time, curated by one of her all-time heroes, Sarah McLachlan.
And I was like, oh my God, my idol has personally asked me to be involved in the Lilith Fair. So I was like, I can't say no to that. And so I went over to the US and I joined that tour. And it changed my life.
Every place we went, there was always a strong base of hardcore fans just so thrilled that she was back, and coming up to her after shows just being like, we're so glad that you're back, we've missed you, when are you writing your next album? And I think those interactions really took her by surprise.
It was a real relief, I think, after so many years of not knowing what my purpose was and trying to find my purpose. It was, it's a bit cliche, really. It was like, well, your purpose is what you were doing all along.
And it was
you do like the melody, like.
I realised that I wanted to make another album. So I started working on that, and it's quite ironic, really. That third album ended up being a lot about writer's block.
And everyone's waiting, but it's getting harder to hear what my heart is saying.
After that whole album was finished, I had a bit of downtime, so I went to Broome. And in Broome I met Dan. It was just the right timing, I think. And we also had a lot in common, like he's a playwright and we were both creative and neurotic and very emotional and very excitable. So we just talked and talked about books and art and plays and music, and I felt like he was like my creative equal in that way. So it was really nice. Yeah, we just became inseparable.
It was all very exciting, you know, and Dan, he completely adored her.
Their wedding was really beautiful. Seeing them just giggling at the altar was pretty cute.
So yeah, we went into it super quickly. We were engaged after 6 months and I was pregnant after we'd been together for 11 months. Sammy came first, and 3.5 years later, Luna came.
Luna, Sammy, come on.
Sunny afternoon. There's going to be big puddles at the bottom of the garden, I think. I think the baby years and the toddler years were pretty dreamy. I loved the idea of just having this family unit because I'd grown up in a really happy family.
Swallowed a bug. What?
I don't know, I guess I just wanted that for my kids.
Good balancing practice.
And my brother and sister were separated. And I remember my sister saying to me at one point, she's like, I reckon you're going to be the one to make it work, you know. You and Dan, you're going to last. And I thought, yeah, I can do this. But yeah, it didn't work. I think just having kids in general is really hard for a relationship. Like it's like putting little bombs into your partnership. And I think for us, we just didn't know how to make it work as a family. Like, there was just too much of a clash with how we wanted to do things, and both of our coping mechanisms with, you know, loudness and chaos were different. There was no fighting ever. There was just kind of a sadness of like, yeah, it's not working. Both of us just wanted to find a way to stay sane and to stay happy, and just, yeah, separating and living in different places just seemed like tragically the logical option for us. The night that we called it quits, I was wearing this dress, and it was New Year's Eve 2021. I was performing for the ABC New Year's Eve broadcast, and I'd been bawling my eyes out all day, and I could hardly sing that night. When I look back at the performance, I'm like, oh, that's rough.
Standing under the city harbour bridge,
Yeah, she was breaking inside that day.
wearing my blue velvet dress, peach on my lips.
Having to perform on a big stage while her world was falling apart was extraordinarily difficult.
That's the night everything changed.
I mean, it's always sad when a marriage breaks up, but, you know, she and Dan are really good friends, really supportive of each other. The kids are happy.
After about a year, I started to yeah, just be able to wrap some words around it and go, okay, yeah, that was that feeling.
It's just wonderful that she has music to process her emotions. It's very cathartic. It's a bit like having a diary, isn't it? Except that everybody, in Missy's case, everybody gets to read it.
In a way, I wanted to write songs about how I was now this fierce, independent, strong, single woman who was like, you know, just doing it all and loving it and realising that I'm better off alone. But it's not the reality. Like, it's just really hard and really sad.
And all that I can tell you is a complicated truth.
I mean, you don't hear many songs from the perspective of a mother trying to explain divorce to their children.
Now our love is something new.
But I just felt like it's not like what I've gone through is unusual, you know? I've just become a single mum unexpectedly at the age of 40, and I'm sure there's probably half the audience can relate to that.
Sometimes happiness is the hardest thing to choose.
You see it, they're crying in the audience or they're laughing, and it's this really kind of raw kind of connection they have with her and her music.
As we get older, we don't want to hear like the rite of passage, like falling in love for the first time story. We want other stories.
I think I'm ready for the turning of the wheel.
Just as Missy helped give voice, I think, to a lot of teenage and early 20s experiences with the sound of white, she's now giving that same expression and voice to the experience of people in their 30s or 40s or 50s who are having to kind of reinvent themselves. And just because there's no commercial radio station that's willing to play it, doesn't mean that it's not a sentiment that plenty of fans are going to relate to.
But it's intermission. Life's calling me back. I think I'm ready for the second act.
I feel like I've learned over the years that honesty and vulnerability is ultimately the thing that makes you feel more connected to other people.
'Cause it's been 10 days without you in my reach.
And it's been gratifying, the amount of people that still want to listen to my music and still find it important. That's incredible.
Time has changed, nothing at all. You're still the only one that feels like home. You're still the only one I've got love. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you very much.
So I decided to paint Missy for the Archibald.
I'm so excited because she hasn't seen it yet. I know exactly what she's going to do. She's going to go, oh, it looks like a photo. Oh, Molly. Welcome to Sydney weather.
It's supposed to be Melbourne weather. Oh, no.
Ah, there I am. Oh my God, it's so big. How do you do that? It's really good, Nick. Oh, it looks like a photo.